Welcome back to a new video. Today I'm going to be breaking down this super fire vintage sample. And then I'm going to show you how I flipped it into a super hard dark beat for Future. But yeah, let's get straight into it. So first I opened up the Whirly V2 from Arturia. I chose the Funky Cat preset and just laid down these chords. Really nice progression. It's actually more simple than it looks. So if I bring the A sharp up an octave, it's literally just a D sharp minor chord with the D sharp on top again. Now the second chord is actually the same chord again, but it's just voiced differently. So if I bring the F sharp up again, it's a D sharp minor chord, but this time we've got the F sharp on top. You can see for the first 4 bars that I'm taking the top line up, and then for the second 4 bars, it's coming back down again. So we walk it back down and then it comes back to the beginning again. And the final chord is just a G sharp minor. As you can see, we've got a G sharp on top. I brought the B up again, and I've got another B on top. Really the top line is where you're getting this creepy, eerie, mysterious vibe from. As you can see, these 2 notes are only a semitone apart, these 2 are only a semitone apart, and then we're walking back down here again. All the notes are close together. It's just creating real tension and mystery. To process it, I started off with this tape cassette kind of sound. I just turned the noise off. Next I added a clever, really small. The decay is pretty small as well. I've kept the wet pretty high. It's the small reflective room preset. That's a tip I'd give you guys, is to use room presets when you're picking your reverb, especially if you're using a sample with real instruments like a piano or Rhodes. You want it to have that real feeling like someone's actually playing it in a room somewhere. Then I added an EQ, cutting the low end out. I did a dynamic EQ to get rid of this peak here and another one there, and then a Evolve compressor to tighten the sound, but I brought the mix down quite a bit, so I didn't want it too tight. On top of that, we have an SSS vintage upright. I like this piano because it doesn't sound too perfect. It has some imperfections. It sounds really old and vintage. Copied the exact same chords, it's just up an octave. I also brought down the velocities quite a bit. The first thing I did was push it towards mono, not all the way, but pretty close, and I also panned it to the right. Then I added a Valhalla vintage verb, pretty short. I used the ambience tile room, but I kept the mix pretty high. I added a speakers from Audio Thing. This basically allows you to run your sounds through different emulations, so like a radio, certain microphones, pretend like it's in a bathroom, stuff like this. Then I added a reels, the excited tape preset. I just brought the wow flutter up quite a bit because I wanted to detune it. I cut some of the high end out with a Pro Q3, and I also added this delay, so now it sounds like this. Next, I added a bass, as per usual, Scarby Rickenbacker. What makes it sound more realistic is this walk down and this little section here as well. You'll notice I've got everything pretty high up, even the bass is in a higher octave. I can't really explain it, but I always find when I have things high up, I love the textures of it, it sounds really good, and then when I pitch it down, it sounds even better, as opposed to just having it in the low octave to start with. Next, I added this accent. It's from Layers Volume 2, which is coming in the next couple of months or so. I'm just literally having it hit on the 1, on the bass note, so it sounds like this without any effects on. I literally just added a half time so it's not so high. Now it sounds like this. Next, I wanted to keep with the vintage realistic theme, so I wanted to add a violin. Now I chose the Joshua Bell violin from Embertone. Very realistic, sounds really fire. There's lots of different articulations and different versions of it. For this one, I chose the harmonic preset. It almost makes it sound like a flute. It doesn't have much attack, it's very soft and airy. And I just did this very simple melody at the end. And again, that just has a very short reverb. One thing I forgot to mention is I automated the delay of the wet dry signal on the piano, because for the last 4 bars, we only have 1 chord hitting and it doesn't fill too much of the space. So I wanted to make sure the reverb hits more in this section here. It's quite subtle, but you can hear the delays a bit more pronounced in this little 2-bar section. So next I added this texture, very subtle, but again, it just adds some depth. Then I actually added 2 perk loops, both from Splice. One is kind of a pretty simple drum bounce, and then the other one is like a little fill towards the end. For both of those, I just filtered them out a little bit, so now it sounds like this. The second to last element, of course, is the vocals. Now I found some vocals on Splice for this one, and I did a little trick with it. Hicks actually showed me this trick. I'm going to link his channel in the description. He does super fire sample breakdowns, vintage R&B stuff. So this is how the vocal originally sounds. So what Hicks showed me to do was basically stretch it out, double time it. So in FL, literally you can go up to this little thing here, it says stretch, make sure that's selected, and you can drag it out, so now it's double the length. This makes it sound more warped, more vintage, more like you've chopped it from somewhere. I did that with 2 vocal loops, so the one you just heard and another one, and that sounds like this. After that, I just processed it. I had a really short but really heavy delay. I did the reverse pitch 4-bar reverse loop preset from Valhalla Delay. Make sure you bring the mix quite far down because it's a bit off time or whatever, but it just adds this nice little texture at the end. And then I added an EQ, cutting some of the low end, a little bit at the high end. I also added one more vocal chop at the bottom here. I learned this little trick from one of Corbinian's videos. I'm sure you guys have seen them. He does lots of cool insights and in-depth reviews on different people's sample styles like Nami, Coop the Truth. And basically when he's breaking down one of Nami's samples, he showed that different vocals have different effects on. Some have lots of delay, some don't. So I wanted to copy that, and I wanted to add this one underneath that has a different processing chain. So for this vocal, I have a different reverb, a plate reverb. I have a delay that's a bit more heavy and a bit longer, and it's a bit more filtered out to have taken more of the high end away. The last thing I added was this guitar. I reversed it and I did the trick that I showed you guys in the previous video. I forgot to mention it last time, but I actually got this from Simbo from Split Mind. I saw it in one of his videos. He just adds a bunch of random chops to a sample, to an audio file. Then he goes to none. He selects it all and just brings it back by maybe two little clicks. Make sure it's set to generic so there's no pops and clicks. It sounds like this without any effects on. Added a shaper box to it so it pulses a little bit. Full mix on the reverb, but it's very short. And finally a tremolo control, just panning it side to side. So all in all, the sample sounds like this. What I'm going to do next is hop into the next FLP and show you guys how I flipped it and manipulated it to sounding like a proper sample. If you guys watched my last video, you'll know I've started using Fruity Slicer quite a lot, and I thought this type of sample was the perfect one to use it on again. So I just dragged the sample in, I set it to a beat slicing so it's got nice and even, you know, pretty easy to work with. First thing I did, I brought the pitch down by 9 semitones. I brought the attack up and the decay up slightly. So what I started doing was messing around on my keyboard with the chops, trying to find a bounce, trying to make it sound different. So yeah, this is what the first half sounds like. Then if we move into the second half, you'll hear it's the same thing, but it's got a few more elements. So once I chopped the sample how I liked it, I started adding the drums. I went for some pretty simple wheezy kind of vibes. So I started off with this clap. Next is these hi-hats. Then I laid the clap with a snare just for a bit more grit. Then I've got another snare for some bounce. After that, I added an 808. Then we have this kick. And then for a little switch up, I added this open hat. Okay, that's the beat for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, don't forget to leave a like and a comment. Let me know what you want to see next, and I'll see you in the next one.